Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Song Radio Show. My name is Leon Jones. This evening's topic, I'm going to talk to you about how to understand the real world. Now, back a few months ago, I started doing videos that were very therapeutic on mental health issues, and a number of us do have mental health issues. We fail to disclose our mental health issues. We deny our mental health issues, and we sweep our mental health issues under the rug like nothing has happened. And that is this culture in general. But getting back to understanding the real world. Well, the real world is very challenging. And if you don't have the endurance, because it is a fight, and I don't care what race you are, I don't care what gender you are, if you do not have the resources and the knowledge, you will not succeed in the real world, period. And what most of us are fed when it comes to the real world, we're fed propaganda to make us feel good. But the only person that can make themselves feel good is you as an individual. Why? Because you know yourself better than the mainstream media. Now you have to understand, first of all, when it comes to government and politics, particularly us as black folk, we don't understand how the system works. So let me tell you, brothers and sisters, about government. There are three branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. Of course, the executive is basically your president. What he does, he signs bills into law. Your Congress is your legislative branch. They make laws. And then the judicial system. They're the ones that listen to arguments regarding the laws. They legislate, but they're supposed to legislate from the Constitution, but not from the bench. Now, lately, you've had a number of ideologues on the left and the right who have been appointed to Supreme Court judgeships. That being said, the real world is made up of politics. And politics has gotten out of hand. It's gotten very partisan. There's a lot of vitriol, a lot of racism going on from everybody. But one thing you must understand about the real world is you must be well informed. And when you're well informed, you will gain not only the confidence, but the endurance to survive the wave of challenges that you go through every day. Part of the real world is deception. Now, why do I say deception? Because there are a number of operatives out there that are going to try to throw you off your path of your focus that you want to utilize to reach your own pinnacle or goals. You always hear, well, you need an education, you need money. That's true. But the education system in the society is broken. I mean, if you look at the millennials today, they're far gone. They've been indoctrinated in their middle schools, high schools, and colleges. They want more free stuff. The problem with the millennials is many of them are living in their parents' basement. and they will never leave their parents' basement. Now, some of it is not their fault. They just don't have the resources, and they don't have the information and the knowledge. In fact, the colleges, the high schools, and the middle schools are only indoctrinating them with left-wing ideological politics. And the left-wingers are very tyrannical in their thinking. You have your radical environmentalist, you have your socialist, you have your communist, and you have your Marxist. Now, on the right, of course, you have capitalism. Now, the United States is basically a mixed economy. We're not a true socialist country, and we're not a true capitalistic country. Although talking heads believe that we are either or, but they have narratives. Now, when you have a conversation with somebody in the real world, and it starts like this, the first skill you need is communication skills. And a number of us don't have the communication skills. You do not have to use big words. You don't have to have a PhD. You don't have to be intellectual. You just have to have good common sense. You have to know what's going on around you. You must be vigilant. A number of us listen to what is communicated to us via television, social media, education, and even some of our parents. Now, our parents should be the biggest role models, but some of our parents have also been indoctrinated because they weren't educated enough to understand their own history and past. And of course, one must understand part of the real world is your past always dictates your future. If you don't believe me, you look at us African Americans. Many young millennials really don't understand African American history until they feel like a victim of circumstance, especially when they get fired from a job. This is when they are going to cry racism. One must understand that racism is not about color. Racism is about a group who has the arrogance and or deception thinking that they're better than everybody else. So what do? They try to incapacitate less fortunate groups. Why? Because they make up a smaller population. And what do? They use propaganda, they use religion, and they use this education system. Now, I do not utilize or say the word white supremacy. I say elitism, because you have some Spaniards who are elitists, you have African Americans who are elitists, you have white folks. The people with the money control the narrative. This is why, when it comes to the political system, you have money going to the political candidates from special interest groups like CPAC, lobbyist groups, unions. And there are other groups out there like the National Organization for Women. Now, the individuals who have the money are always going to be the influencers of how laws are dictated for the rest of us in the United States. And I'm going to tell you right now, here in the real world, if you don't have any understanding of the information that I'm conveying to you, you're going to be lost. Especially some of you young men and women who are trying to leave your parents' nest for the first time. Common sense and truth are always going to prevail, but you have to see it. And the way you see it is you have to experience some ups and downs. And one of the problems when it comes to the real world is you have too many helicopter parents. They don't want to let their children go. They always utilize the fact that, oh, it's too tough out there for the children. Well, it is tough, But some of these parents don't want to let go either. They have their own personality disorders and their own disorder of narcissism. But understanding the real world takes work. And the only way you're going to make the real world work for you is, number one, stay out of trouble. Having a record, particularly if you're a black man, is getting you nowhere. In fact, I was listening to a video yesterday, and shout out to you, brother Xavier, with that commentary on the Obsidian show when it talked about politics. Because as black men, no matter what happens, there is nothing for us. I can tell you, when it comes to us, when Black Wall Street was burned down in 1921, black folk could not get any aid from the city to help them build Black Wall Street back up. If you don't know what Black Wall Street is, it is a neighborhood known as the Greenwood section of Tulsa, Oklahoma. So what did black men do? With their own bare hands, they built Greenwood back up. Now, it didn't function the same way it did prior to the devastation and destruction of Black Wall Street, but it was functionable. And when it comes to government, some of us voted for Donald Trump, some of us didn't. Now, when you go out and vote, you have to understand what you are voting for. What policies are you voting for? A number of us, this is where we forget about the real world. We don't vote on the issues. We vote based on what the person is conveying. But again, you must follow the action. Actions speak louder than words. If you're going to find truth in someone's behavior, you follow their actions. You have a number of these dictators out, like Fidel Castro. You have Charles Taylor of Africa. You had Idi Amin. Oh yes, they had very positive tones in their voices. They knew how to move people. Jim Jones, when they had that travesty in Guyana back in 1978, he knew how to move people with his voice. The problem is the people were too weak. They didn't understand their Bible when it came to Jim Jones, and 900 people, including Jim Jones, perished. Now, the education system in the United States is gone. What they're teaching in school today is basically divisive politics. Now, I'm just going to tell you this about President Obama and my thoughts. You blacks who voted for him, what did you get? You got nothing. So you voted for him because he was black, but he's really blight. But he looked like you and you thought he was going to do something for you. Because a number of you voted with your emotions. You didn't even look at the man's voting record. He is a president, in my humble opinion, who really divided us as a race. You have a number of your irrelevant civil rights leaders like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton who deny that. And you know, those two guys, they want to be in front of a camera so they can be relevant again. But when it comes to understanding the real world as a human being, you can't walk around with blinders, and too many of us do. You must look at all sources. And when you quote statistics, it's easy to just blurt out a number. But what does that number really mean? And the statistic is a sample. How big was that sample? Because it's easy to take a statistic and turn that number to your benefit by using the conformance factor. And basically, when it comes to the conformance factor, it's 68%, 95%, or 98%. Use those numbers to skew the statistics to your point of view. But if you don't understand statistics, you're not going to be able to deliver any real valid information on how that statistic and that sample became empirical data. And also, in the real world, what you got to learn. You heard phrases, particularly in the 80s and 90s, I'm strong and independent. And also in the 2000s, I'm strong and independent. Well, guess what? Many of us are interdependent. We're supposed to be self-sufficient. But see, many of us hear different phrases, like on YouTube. I never heard the word coon until a number of people brought it to life on YouTube. And what many of us do to try to make our points, we're like a Xerox machine. We'll take a word, and if it sounds good, we'll put it in our argument, thinking that we're going to shut the other person down by using that name, like coon, as a factor or a tactic to win an argument. But the way you win an argument in the real world is you have to understand the other person's position. Once you do that, then you can deconstruct their argument, but you have to work backwards. But you have to know how to do that. You have a number of people in the real world, when they converse, they like to loud talk you. Why? Because you may be hitting them with facts. And the facts that you're hitting them with, you're getting on their nerves. Now, I hate to say this with black women, a number of you are good for doing that because you don't want to hear the truth. And part of the real world is hearing the truth and not denying what you have done and how you could do better. A number of black men, I hate to say that, a number of you are very emotional as well. Now, how did that come apart or come about? Came about based on the environment you grew up in. But all you have to do to understand the real world is be informed. And the first bit of information is you need to know your history. Then you need to assess yourself. Assess why you are in a predicament and how you can get out of your predicament. Because again, to be strong, it's not saying you're strong. To be strong is to endure and maintain your integrity. Because a lot of us, what happens when something goes wrong, we become very desperate and we get off our path of focus. And some of us never regain steam to get back on track. So that's what I mean by going off on the deep end. You have to utilize your cognitive thinking skills or critical thinking skills over your emotion. And the problem with a lot of us is we are emotional. We take what we hear because it sounds good and it makes us feel good inside, and we use it. But at the end of the day, many of us have blinders. This is why we don't understand the real world. Understanding the real world, again, requires education. Now, education just doesn't come from school. It comes from the streets. It comes from your job. It basically comes from being vigilant. So when it comes to a degree, there are a number of PhDs out there who don't know about the real world. They may utilize their research when it comes to theory, but the real world has a lot of hidden treasures that geniuses don't know about. But when you know yourself, you understand truth, you know how to communicate properly, you know your worth, you know how to treat people, and you can gather information, take criticism. That's what puts you ahead of everybody else. That's what makes you also strong and self-sufficient. Let me tell you something. It takes a strong person to say they need help. So you have a number of us who play this role that we can do it all by ourselves. You see what happens when you try it, you fail. Why? Because you don't have enough resources. See, this world is made up of a conglomerate of people and different facilities, infrastructure to build a network. A lot of hubs out there. There's also a lot of red tape. And what you want to do to help yourself get through every day when it comes to the challenges is you question that red tape. You don't take everything that's said to you. You write things down. You organize yourself. You know what to say and say it with confidence. And you be unapologetic about it. When you're having a conversation with somebody and they want a name call, well, that person didn't do themselves a favor. They did you a favor. You stop immediately and you go about your business, because you're not going to influence another person by hearing what you want to say when they don't want to hear what you want to say, because they think they're right all the time. Again, I'm talking about this culture as a whole, not talking about black women, black men, white women, white men, Hispanic women, Hispanic men, Asian women, no. Or Asian men, no. I'm talking about society as a whole, because we have a problem in this country because of the lack of information. Then you have a lack of interest in learning information. Let me use black people. A lot of us will talk about slavery, but we don't talk about learning our history. Because one thing I can tell you about slavery, there were black slave owners. I bet you a lot of you African Americans didn't know that. Why? Because you didn't take time to want to learn that, because that doesn't fit your narrative. You blame Whitey, some of you, for some of your mishaps. And again, 60 to 80% of the problems that we have in the African American community, we can solve ourselves. We just don't want to, because we're comfortable being a victim. And we will always be a victim. Why? Because it's much easy for us to continue to use victimization in politics so we get our way. And what I mean by getting our way, well, we can always utilize racism every time something doesn't go our way, which a number of us don't even know what racism is. I just defined it earlier in this video. If you don't know what it is, racism is utilized by the group who thinks they're more inferior, but they're more populated, not inferior. They're more populated, so they have enough resources to make all the rules. And what they do, they utilize their elite status to incapacitate others who don't have as many resources as they do. And the way they incapacitate the less populated groups, known as minorities, is through religion, politics, economics, and everyday socialization. If you don't believe me, you look at what's going on with politics today. It's a lot of partisan politics. This is why nothing gets done in Congress. You have both parties who do not respect the president. Now, I was against a lot of President Obama's policies, but he was the president of the United States and he wasn't respected either in some cases. But individuals lash out too much with their emotions instead of seeing what's going on around them. And at the end of the day, they're wondering why they can't succeed. The real world is a very tough place to succeed if you're not vigilant. This is why I make a point to tell anybody, if you're having a problem with something, ask questions. But before you ask a question, look at the situation with your eyes. Now, eyes can deceive you. Reality can also have different perceptions. You ever heard that old saying, perception is reality? No, it isn't reality. Reality is following the actions. That's how you get to the truth. Reality is also having self-awareness, knowing where your flaws are, and you take responsibility for your own actions instead of utilizing the blame game. And that's what's going on too much in this country, and that's why we are a divided country today. We don't have to be divided, but we choose to be divided. Why? Because it creates drama, and also when it comes to the media, it allows media to continue to manufacture stories. This is where you get all of the fake news. And one thing I will tell you about the real world is a number of us need to turn off the TV and get into some books. Get to the library. Get off social media. Because all you're doing on social media is just putting your dirt out there so everybody else can hear it. And remember, employers can get on your Facebook page and see your activity. And if they see that you have some buffoonery going on your Facebook page or Twitter page, they're not going to hire you. So you must be careful. Be careful who you friend on Facebook. Because what you can get on your page is their information. But again, I can't blame everything on social media. It's like a gun. The gun doesn't kill people. It's the person who picks up the gun that utilizes that gun to kill people. Remember that. We have all these quirky policies that are being fed to us by politicians when these politicians are protected themselves. Gun laws. One thing about the real world, there are a lot of gun laws on the books that aren't enforced. You don't need new gun laws. You need to enforce the ones on the books. The tax code. We need to simplify the tax code. Now, Donald Trump has a good idea, but what he should do if he wants 3 brackets, don't have a 35, 25, and 12 because you raise the bottom tax rate 2%. That means the bottom pay more in taxes. What you do, you have 35, 25, and 10. That way, the bottom doesn't get hit as hard as the top does. The top is always going to get hit hard. Why? Because they make the most money. But the top can always take their money and put it offshore and have itemized deductions. But if you take away the $4,000 deduction, that's going to hurt a lot of people as well. You see how I took that tax code? See, I understand what's going on out there because I've studied it. You must do studying. And when it comes to the real world, to seek the truth, you must utilize common sense. And once you follow the recipe of education and common sense, and you get confident, and you're accountable and responsibility for your actions, and you're grown up, it'll be much easier for you to solve your problems and find out how the real world works. Remember, you live once. Make the best of it. And it's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show for this evening, Friday, October 13th, 2017. You can tune in to the 411 Talk Zone radio show every Saturday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Blog Talk Radio. Guest call-in number is 215-383-5785. If you like my videos, please share and subscribe to the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube so I can continue to give you quality information for educational purposes from a professional and mature perspective. Now on this channel, I don't engage in debates, controversy, or emotion, nor do I participate in drama and or unnecessary bickering. What I do here at the 411 Talk Zone radio show is teach. I give you information that is realistic but positive. Because, again, if you don't understand how the real world works, you're not going to be successful. You're going to make a lot of mistakes that are going to cause you to make poor decisions, and you will become a victim of your own circumstance for the rest of your life. So, when you're informed, you get knowledge. Remember, knowledge is power. And if you have a business, a topic, or a new YouTube channel that you would like for me to discuss on YouTube or Blog Talk Radio, please email me at lej6521@gmail.com. And if you have a comment, please leave your comment in the comment section under the video. But make sure that your comments are pithy. No bloviating, pettifogging, or filibustering if you wish to opine. Now that's it for this video. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. Remember, please be gentle and respectful to each other, and have a wonderful and blessed evening.